that big enough, or should we pull the projector further back?
It looks good. I think we can see it.
It's still working. Yeah, it works.
Okay, well, wait a minute. We're adjusting for the,
Do we get a countdown?
If you sneeze.
No, I didn't turn it on yet. No. She told me how to turn it on. I'll wait for the cue.
Control the start and stop. You start the video before we turn the mic on. Some popcorn for this thing.
Yeah, right. No, better. Oh, that's right. Yeah. I listen, I live in the summer, I stay.
Yeah, whenever the next poll comes out.
Yeah.
how's that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I think we got it.
You got it? Yep. Does the screen come out with it? Okay. It's legible? I mean, we just pull it back and make it bigger.
I think it is legible.
Okay. Okay, you guys get ready to start?
Okay, hold it. We're gonna check, we're gonna make sure that we got it.
Let me get over here just.
Yep, I'll wait for you.
Because this is the microphone I gotta use.
that one on?
Yeah. Well, I'll turn it on when she says so.
Okay. Ray, it's always on. It should be always on.
Oh, it is, okay.
So maybe you turn it off.
Hello? Hello? Does that sound on?
So, try again.
Can you hear me?
I think that's,
This one's on.
No, I don't care about that. Okay? Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to the workshop that we're having on June 27th, 2019, on the Transco presentation of their activities concerning the replacement of the towers with monopoles for the power line on the east side of the town of Clinton that sort of parallels with the Center Road. The format, you all know where the exits are. The bathrooms, if you gotta go, are around the corner here. Just keep going around and you'll wind up over there. Go at your own leisure. And the format will be, we'll have a presentation by Transco. After they're done, I'll moderate the questions. If you're in the audience, step up, talk into the mic. You know the standard procedure. Just try to give us a name and a location, just so people get a relative feel as to where you are. If you're at home, we don't take phone calls. The full PowerPoint will be provided on the town's webpage in a day or two or something like that. So you can look at it again. It'll also be on the scroller, and it'll also be on YouTube, just like we do regular town board meetings. So the process will be very similar. I will then come back after the presentation, raise your hand, come on up here, talk into the mic, and give your question. The Transco people here will answer as appropriate, and we'll move on until we're all done. When we're done, we're done. There's no time limit, and there's no cost. So at this time, I'd like to welcome Shannon Paxson, Sedaris, who's from Transco. She's all wired for sound, so she's going to wander around, but you got to come up here to talk so she can answer your questions later. So enjoy.
Thank you. Again, I'm Shannon Sedaris with New York Transco. I'm the communications and stakeholder lead for the organization. And I'm going to walk you through some information about the New York Energy Solution, which is a transmission upgrade project. Before we get to that, though, I did want to walk through who New York Transco is in case you're not familiar with our organization. We are an organization that is dedicated to coming up with transmission solutions to serve New York, to answer things like reliability, to facilitate renewables, and to improve the resiliency of the overall system. We are created and owned by subsidiaries of Con Edison, National Grid, Avangrid, which is NYSEG and RG&E, and Central Hudson. We've done some other projects in New York which are listed here. If you do want more information about those, I'd be happy to provide them. But we're here to talk about the New York Energy Solution, which is a project we were recently awarded by the New York ISO. We're here meeting today. This will be the first of many meetings, but it's to open up dialogue on the project since we were recently selected, start getting feedback from all of the local stakeholders along the 11 community route of the project, and to start getting some feedback from folks before we enter into permitting and construction. This is an ongoing process that we'll have throughout the life of the project, and we want to make sure that you're familiar with our names and our faces. So again, Shannon Sedaris, I'm with New York Transco. I have here with me today Nicole Marin, who works on the stakeholder and communications team with me, as well as Tal Rapplier, who's a local attorney that works on our outreach team, as well as on some of the legal components of local ordinances for the project. So as I mentioned, we were selected by New York ISO, the independent system operator, in April to advance the New York Energy Solution project. We were not the only project selected at that time. There was another project selected, as you see on this map. That's segment A is the other project, and that goes from Marcy over to New Scotland. That's a separate line, but it helps fulfill a similar purpose as our project. That line is being developed by LS Power and NYPA, so it is not New York Transco. The green line that is on the map that goes north to south, that is New York Transco, and that's what we're here to talk about today, the New York Energy Solution, which is a project that stays entirely within existing rights of way and is for the purpose of relieving congestion on the transmission system and to facilitate renewables from upstate resource centers to downstate demand centers. So the project is a 54-mile run from Schodack down to Pleasant Valley through 11 communities, of course Clinton being one of them. We have 3 counties that we go through, and again, this project stays entirely within existing transmission corridors, existing rights of way, and is for the purposes of upgrading existing transmission facilities to facilitate renewable energy from upstate to downstate and to unlock congestion on the system in a way that is cost-effective, efficient, and reliable. So I'm going to talk about the project in segments to better understand what's going to happen going north to south. Some key benefits of the project that we have will be replacing aging infrastructure. The assets that are out in the corridor today are a little over 80 years old. We'll be replacing them with modern transmission facilities, which will allow for greater transfer capability and again for that flow of clean energy into New York State, which is of course a big benefit for everybody that lives here. We're using existing rights of way to minimize impact, and I know this was a request of stakeholders back when the process had begun, so that's something that this project certainly does. It stays all within existing rights of way. We'll actually be eliminating 260 transmission structures from the existing right-of-way, permanently eliminating them, so you're going to see a real cleanup and streamlining of the right-of-way. Also, the type of structure that we're using provides more resiliency to the overall system because it is directly embedded, its foundation is directly embedded into the ground, which is good for storm hardening purposes. We'll also have local tax revenues that the project will generate, and that will be paid to the 11 communities along the project route. So breaking this down into geographic chunks, the first piece goes from Schodack, runs 22 miles to Claverick. Starting out in Skodak, we'll be building a new switching station on utility-owned property. From that switching station, we will take out one existing structure. You can see there the lattice-style structure. We will be removing that structure, and we will be replacing it with a new monopole structure. In doing so, we will move one of the 115 kV lines to that new structure, and we'll put on a 345 kV line as well. Today, out in the right-of-way there, in this section, there are two 115 kV lines, so we'll eliminate one of them entirely. This will go, again, for 22 miles, this configuration, from Skodak down to Claverick, staying all within existing rights-of-way. The structure heights will increase by about 10 feet. What's out there today is about an 80-foot structure, so when this project is done, you'll be looking at about a 90-foot structure in the right-of-way. The foundations that I mentioned, there's a single foundation in this monopole design. It's directly embedded into the ground, which allows for that storm resiliency piece. This is really great for not only that piece, but also it frees up some space in the right-of-way. The existing structures today have 4 foundations, so we'll be removing those structures, and you're going to go down to 1 foundation, which will free up some land in the area. So again, this 22-mile section, we're doing a 1-for-1 replacement, basically. In the second piece, once we hit Claverick, we'll be rebuilding an existing NYSEG switching station. It's called the Churchtown Station. And from that new station built on existing NYSEG property, we will run about 32 miles, and Clinton's in this piece, 32 miles of the new configuration where we're removing 80-plus-year-old assets. But in this case, we're removing 2 structures that are in the right-of-way today. So if you were to go out here in Clinton and look at what's in the right-of-way, you'd see those 2 lattice-style structures. We'd be removing both of those, and in their place, putting 1 structure. So you start to see a dramatic reduction of structures within the right-of-way in this second segment. In fact, in Clinton, we would be permanently eliminating 59 structures from the right-of-way. So this is just a closer look of where the line goes in Clinton. It's about an 8-mile run, again, with the 2 lattice-style structures being removed, and in their place, a single monopole type structure with a 115 kV line and a 345 kV line on that new structure. There's another little segment that we'll be upgrading in Livingston. It's about a 2-mile tap line off of this main 54-mile run. We're just basically replacing one of the structures on that tap line with a similar type structure. It's called an H-frame. It'll be about 5 feet taller, and that will run from on the Blue Store's tap line to the Blue Store substation. So this is just a chart to show a town-by-town overview of the project and what's happening in each town. It'll take a bit to digest this, but I would call your attention, obviously, to the blue highlighted section for the town of Clinton. We have 8 miles of the transmission upgrade project that we'd be doing in the town of Clinton. We would be taking out 118 lattice-style structures that are out in the right-of-way today. And there would be, we'd be permanently removing, we'd be putting in 59, so you'd see a 59 structure reduction from the right-of-way. So I mentioned we were selected by New York ISO on April 8th to start advancing the project. We immediately began doing our stakeholder outreach and engagement, which is a cornerstone of this project, and you'll see throughout the life of the project. That's where we want to get feedback and input and keep folks aware of what we are planning to do on the project. We anticipate submitting our permits, which is the Article 7 is one of the big permits we have to do in the state of New York. We anticipate submitting that this October. We would go through our permitting cycle and hope to have all permits in hand by 2021. And we'd go through a 2-year construction cycle to put the project into service at the end of 2023. I mentioned the Article 7 permit. This is the one-stop shop that's done through the Department of Public Service. It's where all of the key permits are wrapped into this process with all of the state agencies and municipalities, and there's a lot of opportunity here for public involvement and engagement, and that's something that we'll help facilitate as well as we get through this process and get to that October filing. This is something we'll be putting out a lot of information on. We also have some additional permits that will be required to obtain in order to construct the project, which are listed here. I mentioned how we've been undertaking stakeholder outreach. We've sent notifications to all of the landowners along the route to let them know of the project selection and our advancement. We've also sent information on survey work, which has been ongoing and will continue throughout this summer and fall. That survey work consists of, we've done some to do photo simulations, some shovel testing to get archaeological information. Later this summer, we'll be doing some soil borings, again, to get more information about the actual earth that we'll be going into during construction. And we'll keep providing more information on this as we have it. But this is all to inform our engineering, design, and ultimately permitting process for the project. So we do have some channels available already for public involvement. We have a website that will be a living document that we'll be updating as the project progresses with information. That's www.ny-es.com. We have a toll-free hotline that you can call and you'd reach one of us if you had questions. And we also have an email address up there if folks wanted to send an email to get some more information or provide us some information. You're going to see a lot of us as the summer progresses and as we get into permitting. We're anticipating conducting door-to-door outreach to all of the landowners along the route later this summer, probably in about the later August timeframe. We'll be looking to do community open house meetings starting in September, so you'll get some more information on that as we plan them. And then, again, we're looking to do an October filing, so you'll be starting to get more information about the Article 7 process as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Ray to moderate any questions there might be. This is my contact information. I do work for New York Transco, so if you need to get in touch with me, my stuff's up there as well.
Okay. Does anyone have a question or comment at this point? Come on up, Ray.
Ray Rivard, 9 Partners Road. I just have a question for you. Are you going to be blasting at all when you put the new foundations in?
I haven't heard about blasting.
My concern is the gas line that's there.
So the gas line, we have to coordinate with Iroquois on any work that we're doing as it relates to the transmission line upgrade. So that's something that we can provide more information on as we continue to consult with Iroquois.
Okay. Also, are you going to put lights on the top of these things?
I've not seen that on any of the designs. We're at about 30% design right now, so that's something we'd come back and share with you once we got further along.
Just ask about lights on the
Top of the towers.
top of the towers, and about blasting during construction. And if you just use a shovel to dig it, that's one thing, but if you got a blast for rock,
Sure.
that could impact the gas line, and it could also impact the wells in the area. So that's my concern.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Greg? Come on up.
I've got a few questions. Thank you.
Sure.
First of all, I assume that studies have been done on the EMS from the 345K versus the 115, and I know that the height above the ground is a factor in, the EMF is measured by Gauss meters, that sort of thing. Can you speak to that for me?
Sure. So we have not done studies on this project, this configuration. We will have to do them in advance of the Article 7 filing. That's something that will occur this summer, those studies, those EMF studies. So that's something we could provide at that time.
But I mean, if the EMF is too high, once you've done the studies, then that changes everything with regards to the height of the poles, no?
I can't speak to that because I think we'd need the data in order to speak to that. I can't talk about mitigation measures. I just don't have enough information at this point.
Will that be released, those studies?
Yes,
Information?
yes,
You said about 90-foot structures.
yes.
Can you tell me what that range is? About, you say about?
Do you know what the range is? It varies throughout the right-of-way depending on
What's the
clearance.
range? What's the highest?
I don't know what the
Off the
highest
top-
is.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I'd have to look
Yeah,
at the engineering.
they're still working on some of the clearance issues because
So
the
it could go
the
considerably
topography.
higher than 90.
I don't know that. I couldn't say considerably higher.
local jobs? Will there be, I mean, this past winter, I have a farm in Hollow Road, Clinton, sorry. I have a farm on Hollow Road in Walnut Lane, and we have towers going through the farm. And this past winter, there was a project this past fall to paint 4 of the towers, and they brought in a flatbed of 16-inch by 16-inch timbers, 2 huge excavators, and a bunch of other equipment from Minnesota to put down a roadway so that a pickup truck could go in and paint 4 towers. Took about 4 weeks. I have no idea what that cost. Is that the sort of thing are you going to be using outside labor and non-New York labor and that sort of thing? Where are the jobs?
So we will have all of the jobs information, something that's ongoing, doing that study right now. We do have an agreement with IBEW, I think it's 97, so there would be local New York labor agreements put in place for this work. There would certainly be people from out of state as well because of the specialized nature of this type of transmission work. We anticipate local jobs though because we have concrete needs, we have gravel needs. There's going to be a lot of different ancillary components of the project that would...
I mean, I understand, and I know that you have to have skilled labor to do a lot of this stuff.
Sure.
But this particular project that I'm referring to that happened 6 months ago or 7 months ago was laying down timbers. This is not skilled labor.
Yeah, I can't comment to that.
I can't even imagine how many hundreds of thousands of dollars this project cost to come out from Minnesota to paint 4 towers. And if that's indicative of what's coming up, I'm concerned. So you don't know about that.
I don't.
Will there be intervenor funds available once you've gone through the Article 7 process?
Yes.
Okay. And will those intervenor funds be for just municipalities, or will they be for?
So intervenor funding is available to municipalities and also other non-governmental organizations. You'll have to make an application to the Public Service or Department of Public Service for those, and they have to be approved through them.
I apologize. I should have said at the beginning, I'm with Hudson Valley Smart Energy Coalition. Full disclosure. And then lastly, you mentioned tax revenues. What exactly does that mean, and where does it come from?
Sure.
What are you looking at?
So we pay taxes on all of the assets that we will have in the right-of-way. Every single structure, every single upgrade to a rebuilt switching station, we pay taxes on
So these are state
everything.
taxes.
No.
Local taxes.
Yeah.
It's essentially real property
No,
taxes.
he's got a cool.
I'll just yell a little bit. I've got a big mouth.
Speak
Oh,
into
all right.
her sweater.
I represent a number of towns, and so I kind of understand how the town tax system works. Right now, for every piece of equipment, every asset that is in the right-of-way, we are paying taxes on. They're 80 years old. They've been depreciated, and you're not getting a whole lot of income out of that. However, once these new structures come in and the new equipment is there, it'll be taxed at full value. And so the real property tax coming both to the town, the county, and the school, and the special districts as well. You have ambulance, fire, probably water, will
Do you
all
know
get.
what the depreciation schedule is going to be, how many years it's going to be paying down? those
Again,
structures?
we don't have that information because we only got awarded the contract in April. But our people are working on that, and as soon as we have that, we'll make it available.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next person? Did you have your hand up, or were you? No, okay. Oh, okay, go on. I didn't see. Talk into the microphone.
Diana Schaff on Clinton Avenue, and I would like to know how long you think it would take to take down the towers and put the new towers up, because you'd be coming through my horse paddocks. I'd be disturbed.
So it's understood, and we'll need to work with you and every other landowner along the right-of-way about the specifics on the schedule. I can't say with any specific detail right now what that would mean to you or anybody else along the right-of-way in terms of timing for a particular parcel. We will have most likely multiple crews out there working simultaneously on the different sections of the project. We do have a pretty firm date that we need to meet for the in-service, which is the end of 2023. So there's that 2-year construction window starting in 2021 and getting it finished up at the end of 2023. As the project evolves and we refine the schedules with more clarity, we're going to come out to you and talk to you about what are your concerns with how you're working the land. Are there things that we need to be aware of? I know there's a lot of agricultural activity on various parts of the right-of-way. So how can we avoid impacting, say, harvest cycles or things of that nature? That's something we need to come out and get more information on, and then we can start building our schedule better to understand how to avoid impacting.
Okay, and when you're coming out with obviously big equipment. Where are you leaving that? On my property as well, or?
So we will determine staging areas, marshaling yards for equipment, supplies, materials that we need for the project, and that's something that we determine ahead of time. And if it's a private landowner that has available land, that's something we would negotiate with that landowner. If they say no, then we can't go on their land. I mean, it's pretty simple. But that's something that we would be identifying ahead of time. It goes into our Article 7 application. So that's something that it's incumbent upon us to figure out and make sure that we have the rights to do it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, come on up, Nancy.
Right in front of her. Nancy McLaughlin, Clinton Avenue, Diana's neighbor. And we have similar concerns as well. We're into agriculture and haying many of the fields that are underneath and around the power towers. So I just want to express that concern and Greg's concern as well for the damage on the property, or how much damage will be done bringing in the big equipment and going across the property. So that's a concern as well. So I did hear your answer to that. And also communication. We have not received anything in the mail regarding information. I know some other people have. How do we make sure that we do get communication from you?
Can we get your information and how you prefer to be communicated with before we leave today?
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yes, that was my neighbor.
Okay.
As well. So that's a concern that we're being we don't want to be overlooked and then have equipment show up.
No, that's something you would definitely need to get advance notification about what's going to happen on construction and get continual updates on progress with it as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And in terms of the agricultural land, one of the techniques that's used is putting down matting to protect the land. So that is something we would employ in this project as well, and we would identify the areas that would be matted. So that's something else we'd work with the local landowners on.
That's a nice concept, but you don't want to put a mat over a hayfield before it's cut.
Correct, and that's where we need to.
That's right.
That's where we need to go in and find out harvest cycles so that, we don't come in and mat 2 days before you're about to harvest the hay. So we need to learn all of that information from you so that we can incorporate it in. And that's going to be landowner by landowner. We have an agricultural plan to do exactly what I'm describing, to go out and talk to folks about this. It's very important for our process and is something that the state is going to be looking to make sure that we do. We'll have monitors out there making sure that we're protecting agricultural lands.
And that specific prong of what we're doing is really our 3 jobs, so it'll be us that you'll be working with. We'll come to your house, we'll sit down, we'll figure out what your schedule is, when you're planting, when you're harvesting, and avoid that as best we possibly can. There are no guarantees, but we will work with you, and that's our job, so you'll see us again.
Thank you. And one other question. You're going to have different stanchions. The stanchions will not be in the same place as the old ones.
You mean the poles?
The poles.
So in terms of placement of the new monopoles, we don't have that finalized. That's something that's ongoing in the engineering. Again, something we'd come out and talk to you about as a local landowner to find out what your, kind of thoughts are on that. Right now, they are looking to place them as close as possible to the existing placement of structures, but there may be some reasons why they have to move them, or like a span different.
Will the old one be removed?
Yeah, they're removed completely. The 2 that are there today are removed completely, and 1 new one is put in their place.
And with the new configuration also, they're calculating that you'll get at least a half an acre extra of usable space.
Oh,
Yeah.
Because we're removing those 4 bases, and you're just gonna have, and in this case, there are 8 bases. In this case, there's just gonna be 1, and there are no guy wires.
that's all for now. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. And please give us your contact information. Anybody else too, we'd love to have your contact information.
Elizabeth Strauss, I'm on Clinton Avenue. I have a show horse boarding and training center there, adjacent to one of the fields where the power line goes through. What kind of noise are we going to be expecting from dismantling and constructing? Because our horses are flighty, and I don't want anyone to get killed. I'm serious.
Yeah, no, I've done other transmission projects where there have been similar concerns with horse farms right adjacent to the lines. That's something we'd have to come and talk to you about during the construction cycle, about what's going to happen when near your specific property.
I mean, how do you knock down the old ones? Do you dismantle them from the top? Do you?
I'm not sure how they remove them.
It's something to be concerned about.
Those construction techniques are something, again, that we have to come back and talk to folks about. We're so early on in this, we just don't have all of the answers today. And I know that's frustrating because we're here talking to you, but
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna be in business during the construction period, so, you know, I don't want anyone to get hurt. I don't want any horses to take off and jump over a fence and break their neck. So, you know, unless this is gonna be happening at night, it's something that I really have to plan for.
sure.
Again, that's, it'll be our job to come out and talk to you and figure out what the time frames are going to be for that. In particular, I'm kind of sensitive to that. My daughter's a big eck rider, and she's also an equine vet, and so I'm plugged into that, and so we will be working with you.
Yeah.
All right, I guess my other two other questions, do you know which ones you're gonna be eliminating now? Which, towers?
It's the 2 lattice style structures that are in the right of way.
But I know, but you said you would go down in number by 59 in Clinton.
Correct. There's
So-
118 in Clinton throughout the 8-mile stretch. We'd be taking out all 118, and in their place, we'd be putting in 59 new monopole structures.
So there's an increased distance in between them, or no? Or some of them side by side? I don't understand.
So you have
what's
2. We're taking them both out, and we're putting in 1.
happening. Okay. And then, are the ratepayers still financing this whole project?
Yes, this goes through the ratepayer. Transmission is paid for by everybody in the state of New York, yes.
So, but it's still benefiting downstate?
It benefits all New Yorkers. There's a lot of ways to look at this. Actually, the way that this power flows, it's an AC, alternating current line. So that is not a point-to-point. That's a DC line is a point-to-point, where you plug it in at one point, it goes down to another. There's no stops in between. This is an AC line. An AC line has tap lines off of it. The Blue Store's tap in Livingston is an example. So power does flow to local substations off of this line.
All right, and do we know what the cost is and what our rates will be increasing by?
So we've done a baseline rate calculation based on the capital costs of the project, and it's broken up into zones across the state of New York as to who pays what, and that's not something we determine, that's determined by FERC. For this particular area, for the 2 zones that go through the project, it averages for a residential customer $1 to $2.70 per year on the bill.
It's a lot better than it used to be. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Somebody else? Okay. Oh, I see you in the back there.
Pam Lovinger, Clinton Avenue. I've been through an Article 7 procedure before in Pleasant Valley, the line that was built between Pleasant Valley and Dover. So I'm familiar with some of the things that will be part of the Article 7 documents that you're preparing, but maybe for the people who aren't here and aren't familiar, you could talk a little bit about, we'll be going through a number of protected wetlands, protected federally and by the state, as well as smaller wetlands which aren't protected, if you could talk a little bit about that and your regard for them. Also, part of the material you put out said that you're going to be surveying areas where rare and endangered species could be living and or coming to breed, let's say. I'd like to know if you could speak a little bit about that. You'll be using herbicides and pesticides. You're going to be clearing along the right-of-way, and there will be diseased trees, invasive species, and if you could talk a little bit about that as well, which I know will be in the document once we get it. It'll be made public, it'll be online, so it'll be available to everybody, but these are important concerns, as well as the issue of the height, which is something that is really important. And I know height will vary with the terrain, but when you have it, I know that you can give us the height of the lattice towers, and you can give us the height of each and every one of those monopoles.
You're correct.
We'll know what we will be looking at.
You're correct, yes. In terms of all of those environmental pieces that you noted, we have been out doing survey work. It's required, as you know, by the Article 7 process to delineate all of the wetlands and to come up with ways to avoid them if possible, and methods that you would do to reduce impact to all of those wetlands. That's something that our environmental team is working on right now. That's something, again, that gets fed into the Article 7 process required by DEC. You asked about, sorry, there are a lot of items on your list. Same thing, same process for that. We have to go out and do a study that gets pulled into the Article 7 process. I don't have information right now because they're undergoing all of these efforts at the moment as we speak. In terms of the management of the right-of-way for operations and maintenance, you talked about that with herbicides, pesticides. I don't know what the plan is right now because that's something we're formulating, but there will be an operations and maintenance plan for the right-of-ways, just as all of the companies do for transmission right-of-ways. In terms of vegetation management for the area, that's something also that gets done for construction as well as long-term for operations and maintenance. We do have to maintain certain clearances from the line, from danger trees, things like that. So that will be something that we'll be able to say in the town of Clinton, this is what it's going to look like. We're just not there at this moment in front of you today, but that's something we would come back with and detail out.
And again, your expectation is that you'll have all that documentation ready by October?
In October is when we're planning to file, mid-October, yes.
And then when would you anticipate we'd have public hearings?
I don't know. It's sort of speculation.
So for many of the Article 7s that I found, usually public statement hearings are within 6 months of the application. I would guess, I have no idea, but I would guess that by like April 2020, we would have something.
But we'll let you know about that schedule too. As you know, that gets posted on online, and we'll put everything related to the Article 7 process on our website as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Come on, Don.
Very well presented.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Don Estes, Chief East Clinton. Couple questions about emergency service response that I'm thinking about going here. How many workers would be involved with the project at any given time?
I don't know. At this point, I have no idea. We can come back once we have a contractor on board to answer
Obviously,
some of that.
with more people in a situation like that, also we need to be concerned with the accessibility into the areas where the working is being done, and I'm sure the accessibility would actually be improved from what it is today, because the power line area is often a place that we have to go to for grass fires, et cetera, So I would assume that the accessibility for emergency equipment would only get better.
So there are existing access roads that you're probably familiar with.
Right.
We would be utilizing those existing access roads, and if they needed to be improved in order to get equipment in or to actually complete the
instruction. Because there's going to be large equipment, and I was talking to Ray before about it. He was the 500-pound gorilla in the room, which he often is, how do you transport these large on our small roads?
Long poles.
So we have to come up with a traffic management plan to determine which roads we would utilize to get the equipment in and to get the equipment that we're taking out. So that's something that we have to work with our contractors on, but also each of the municipalities and the counties to figure out the best way to do that. That gets put into our process and is something we would be coordinating with emergency response personnel closely on.
Right, exactly, absolutely, understanding that. So we don't know how many it may be, but when it starts, it goes. So it's not, okay, it's now December, we're gonna take December off.
No, actually a lot of transmission work, probably to the chagrin of a lot of workers, is done in the wintertime.
Well, obviously, for apparent reasons. Accessibility, impact on roads, and workers we don't know yet. And I think that covers my emergency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
The one thing that I'll add too is on the emergency aspect, and I've been to 6 meetings so far, and I only joined the team in April, but I've been to 6 meetings, and they start every meeting with a discussion about safety. This company is very, very focused on safety, and so they're going to make sure that that continues.
First responders, couldn't be more timely. Hopefully all is well.
Anybody else? I have a bunch of questions, but I wanted to let everybody else talk. You gotta come up here. You gotta come up here and talk.
Yeah,
People in the audience.
machinery damages our dirt driveway. I assume we have to let you on it if that's the only way to get in. We don't, okay.
So we would have, there are access roads that exist today that have been historically used to maintain those 80-year-old assets through the right-of-way. Our intention is to continue using those existing access points. Should there be a need for additional access, that's something we would have to negotiate with the landowner. That would be a separate negotiation, and if the landowner says no, we can't go on your property if it's your private property. It's as simple as
I already
that.
had someone park in my driveway with a trailer and a truck, and I went out and said, "What are you doing here?" "Well, we didn't think you would mind."
I don't know who that was or who it was related to.
It was with this project, so, so I don't have to permit it.
No, and find out who that was, because we need to put an end to
It was
that.
a long time ago, but next time I'll
Yes,
take
please.
names. In the past, they maintained them with helicopters.
We don't know what the contractors are going to do at this point.
Can I ask, was that in the last few months that they did that, or years ago?
No, a few months, yeah.
A few months, okay.
Yeah, again, if there's somebody on your property that's not supposed to be there and they are with New York Transco or somebody else, please call us and let us know. And there's the arrangement that we have is they're supposed to be letting us know if anybody's going out, so that if we get a call from you or anybody else that's in this room or along the right-of-way, that we can respond to that. Sure.
Come on up.
I'm Tom Manaher, and I live at 292 Browning Road, and it's not far from this woman's property. And I just wanted to comment, not really a question, but I had a similar problem with the tree trimmers that were the subcontractor for this project. And I have a 4-acre piece of property that adjoins the power line. And while they were in there with all the bucket trucks clearing probably 3 months ago in the spring when the ground was wet, nobody asked permission. And after they got done, a convoy of probably maybe 5 or 6 bucket trucks cut right through my property and left 2-foot ruts in the ground. Nobody asked to go in, and nobody really came to address the fact that it looks like maybe they even had to tow some of the vehicles out of there because it was so soft. And they just cut right through my property out to Browning Road from the right-of-way, just down from Clinton Avenue.
So that definitely wasn't us, because we haven't been out doing.
It was a subcontractor.
No, we don't have any subcontractors out doing any vegetation work whatsoever. There's no, all we have, folks.
They were there at least a week, And they cleared all the trees.
It was probably vegetation management from National Grid.
National Grid has been doing some maintenance work on the right-of-way.
They're not National Grid trucks.
Right.
It was a
Right.
subcontractor
They do
for
use
National Grid.
subcontractors. I can get you the,
The problem is, you're portraying that in the future, when all this construction begins, that somebody's gonna ask permission, and that wasn't the case. I've already experienced where large equipment went through my property, damaged the property, nobody came to repair it, and I did make a complaint, and a phone call from a foreman from that company. He said he would come down and take care of the problem, and I've never heard from him again. So, just a comment about, I hope this doesn't continue in the future where they say they're not gonna interfere with people's private property, and I can attest to the fact that it's already happened.
Sure.
And it sounds like another local resident had a similar situation.
I'd like to just go over a little bit how construction works with an Article 7 project like this one. We have to put together an environmental management and construction plan called an EM&CP. That document is both big binders and drawings of where we can access and where we can put our trucks and what we have to do to actually build the project. We have to stay on those roads. We can't deviate from what the plan is.
I'm just telling you what's already occurred.
Yep, it's very,
Nobody asked permission to be on
Right.
my private property. All these large trucks cut through, damaged my property. I made a complaint. The foreman said he would address it.
Sure.
And I've never heard back from him.
sure. And,
And it's probably because they're not local. We are local. I live just less than an hour away.
Bottom line is, I just want to bring it to your attention.
Yeah, sure.
And when
and-
we're using outside help and subcontractors, what they're supposed to do doesn't always happen.
Well, we hear you, and I'm gonna give you my card, so that if anything happens in the future, you call me, and I'll get down here with the folks from Transco on top
Okay,
of those.
I'd like to have your card, because I'd rather call you
Please.
than call the police.
Please.
And make a formal criminal complaint.
Please.
Sure.
And then, then we're dealing with civil actions and
Yep,
the courts, which nobody wants that.
I agree.
So I would have appreciated if the gentleman did follow up with me, and like he said he would, and off to another job.
Exactly.
And that's what happens.
But we're here.
That's all.
We're local.
Well, thank you for your card.
Yep.
If we have any problems in the future, I'll give you a call personally.
Please do.
Anyone else? Okay, I got a bunch of questions.
Where the
No,
towers
you
are
gotta
on
come
my
over here. I'm sorry. The audience wants to hear.
Where the towers are on my property is within a paddock, and if you're coming with big equipment, I'm assuming you're gonna have to take down fencing. Are you putting that fencing back up?
That's something we would figure out with you what the best way is to handle it. I can't talk about a specific parcel and a specific situation right now. That all goes into the plan, and we have to consult with you individually on what's out there. What do we need to do to avoid, if we can? What do we need to do to mitigate if that's necessary? So that's something we'd have to have a one-on-one conversation about. Each parcel is different. National Grid owns the right-of-way in fee, but each parcel is different, and that's something we have to talk to each landowner along the way.
Anyone else? You're not limited to one or two. I mean, okay, I got a bunch of questions here. Some of these are fairly trivial, but we'll get through them here. Which side of the pole is going to be the 345 line? On the east side or the west side?
Hold on. Go back to the picture. We'll get a big one. So the 345, if we're looking at it, it's looking south. So it would, I'm sorry, directionally confused at the moment. It would be over to the right. That's facing south. That's facing south.
Be
It'd
the
be
west
on-
side.
I can't read what
You're
that's.
facing south, that's a south view, correct?
Yep, that's a south view.
South view, so the 345 is off to the right,
Correct.
so it's the west side.
Yeah, west side, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is, as it exists, I don't see any service being directly provided to the town of Clinton. The only way we would get anything is whatever dribbles up from Pleasant Valley, the big substation down there, which is owned by Con Edison, would be the only way we would get any benefit locally of this line. Is that a true statement?
I don't know how the grid, the local distribution grid works after Clinton. I'm not sure.
You're not putting any wires that go from your 345 or 115 line into anything else.
We're not building any new tap lines or new substations with a tap off of it.
So we don't get any obvious direct benefit out of that line coming to us here. May get some benefit coming back from Pleasant Valley, but that's part of the Central Hudson distribution system. Okay, the other one is, last fall, I know this isn't your situation, but it's very similar to what that gentleman said. Somebody sprayed herbicide on that power line to sort of help to get rid of the underlying shrubs and brush and little trees. Are you going to be doing that too? And then are you going to give us notification? Because the town never got any notification of that. And I've had lots of calls and I couldn't track it down, who the heck was doing it.
So,
We saw the results of it, but we didn't know who.
So for operations and maintenance, we do have to put together a plan for how we would long-term manage the line and the corridor in that area. That's something that we have not finalized at this point. Typically for any sort of vegetation work, whether it's tree trimming or spraying or whatever it may be, there's a notification process that occurs with that. That's normally what happens on transmission corridors. So I can't speak to what happened to you this past fall, but that's something that we would be providing to you, the details of our operations and maintenance for this section once we have it developed.
Okay, the other one is, what kind of liability or insurance are you going to give to the town for abuse to the roads as you bring this heavy equipment over, especially our bucolic, scenic, rural, dirt, country roads? How are you going to fix them? Because we've had other things done, and it's been a challenge when even the Cablevision company putting lines under, I know you're not going under, but going through, digging up, or we had Central Hudson replacing poles on these dirt roads, leaving ruts like this. So how do we handle that with you guys?
So that gets put into our EM and CP, which Nicole had described. That's part of the Article 7 process. So we have to have a plan for which roads we'll use, the type of process that we'll take when we're using them, or what kind of equipment's going up and down them. And then if there's any sort of restoration that needs to occur, that's something that gets placed into the plan as well.
And that's something that we speak with the towns about, what our restoration plan for the roads are, and we sit down with you and talk about it.
Same thing if there are county roads or state roads,
Yeah,
it's the
I
same
understand. I'm
process.
just looking, we have the more challenging roads compared to the
Sure.
higher quality road that you have for Route 9, 9G, or whatever it is, okay? So I'm just trying to preserve us, because any damage that doesn't get covered by Transco, the taxpayers pay. So that's another, not a negative benefit to the town, because we got to raise taxes to pay for the repairs. What about, are you going to give the town or discuss with us a liability policy so that if somehow in the process of you moving your poles, your equipment, or whatever, you get accidents or something, or are you going to handle that directly with whoever you run into or whose house you knock a hole in the wall or whatever?
There's a claims process that's usually established right from the get-go with whomever will be the contractor constructing this. That's something we could come back and give you more details on once we get to that point.
because that's a big liability in this kind of stuff. As Don Esty said, as we were talking previously, these poles are probably gonna be about 140 feet long. That's pretty long considering some of the windy roads we have and trying to get from here to there, because you're not making them in 2 or 3 pieces. I think it's a monopole, one solid welded or whatever.
Well, they come in pieces,
Oh, they do?
and get, most likely, this is what I've seen in the past time, I'm assuming that they're gonna do it this way. But, they come in pieces and get assembled in the right of way. So you don't have a 90-foot long pole going, the windy roads.
Yeah.
So.
Now, the other constructional aspect, when you put these poles up, is the physical pole going into the ground with concrete and stuff, or are you putting a base in the ground for like 15 feet or 10 feet, concrete and all, and then you bolt this monopole to that base, or don't you know?
I think it's directly embedded, but I don't know what kind of concrete formation there could be. That's something we'd have to come back with our construction guy.
Because that determines the impact on the community, on the height of the pole and all of that, bringing it and coming and assembling it and trying to stick it up in the air and everything
So
else.
the 90 feet is from the ground up.
Right,
That's not adding an additional foundation to that and then 90 feet.
yeah, well, you gotta go in the ground some distance.
Correct.
In a lot of places in this town, and I've walked over it, I own a lot of property, and I know what it is. It's a rocky town, okay? And Iroquois Gas Line, I was in office at that time, had a hard time finding the right kind of way to wiggle their way through town so they didn't have to blast through rocks and everything else to just get a good base. And then they had to bring in a lot of sand and everything else to protect the line from rocks and stuff like that, so it wouldn't damage the coatings and everything else. So it's a challenge, and that's what I want to be careful about understanding.
It is, but I will say a gas pipeline is a big difference
Oh,
from
I know it
transmission
is,
line
but I'm just-
construction.
but The point is that they had to dig through rock too.
There is another gentleman as part of our outreach team. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it here tonight. He's with the construction team also, and he's told other people in other towns that it's a bore. At this point, we have no intention of blasting, but we don't know that for sure. But it's supposed to be a bore, and it's going to go straight into the ground. So hopefully, regardless of what stone is there, we're going to bore right into it.
Okay, I have practical experience on this. Through my property, I got about a mile of Central Hudson poles that they all replaced this past winter and last fall. And they had to replace in rock. They brought in humongous pieces of equipment to drill the holes in the rock so that they could put the poles where they wanted them. So I can envision the same thing. I mean, this is heavy equipment. And the difficulty that occurs is you're going to be limited on access as it stands right now on how to get there, because New York State Bridge Authority, Department, has been classifying the bridges, and the local bridge right down here last year was 20 tons. It's down to 15 in 6 months. And it probably will not get fixed for another 2 years. And there are other bridges in the area. There's one at Salt Point that's bad. So if you're coming in from that angle, or, I don't know, your flow pattern, you're gonna have real good concern of how you're gonna get there, because you can't go over the bridges. The rule on bridges is very simple, as I tell most people. You break it, you buy it. And that you're talking is anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000, depending on the size and stuff. So, I mean, that's a significant hit.
Well, and that's a good piece for us to know. I mean, we will make sure that the folks that are doing that part of the plan understand that and make sure that they know what the routes are appropriate to the bridges.
The Department of Transportation obviously is part of the Article 7 process, so they'll be reviewing our transportation plans as well, along with each local municipality.
So, I mean, these things keep changing. I don't have any more. Does anybody else? Yes, come on up.
The 90-degree approximation height, is that a maximum or is that an average?
It's an average height.
Do you know what the maximum height is?
No, I think somebody asked that before. We don't, we don't have all of the specifics on each exact structure height. We will, because that's part of our requirements for Article 7 in our construction plan. That's something we'd come back to each of the towns and share with you, particularly if you're an abutting landowner, to know what'll be in your area.
The only reason I bring that question up is when this project.
Yeah, we're gonna,
When this project initially was proposed back about 7 years ago, and the first proposal was they were even going to implement eminent domain, expand the right-of-way, and after negotiations and different groups opposed it, from my understanding, the agreement was that there wouldn't be any expansion of the right-of-way. It would
That's
stay
correct.
within the existing envelope.
Correct.
Not only in width, but also in height. So this is the first I'm hearing that they're going to be higher than the existing towers, which is the current right-of-way. So has that changed?
So we are required to stay within certain limitations for height, and the structures were dramatically reduced from probably what you recall last go around. And the average height increase is a 10-foot increase over what's there today. That's what I can tell you right now. Like I said, we'll have more detailed information as we go from north to south along the right-of-way.
They amended it to allow a 10-foot rise above what the current envelope is?
No, I wouldn't say that. And what I'm saying is our average height increase is 10 feet. There will be some areas because of terrain or clearance requirements that we would have to go higher. But the average across the board, north to south on the 54 miles, is a 10-foot height increase from what's out there today.
So it could be significantly higher than the 90.
No, I
based
wouldn't
upon the
say
terrain.
that. I wouldn't say that it would be significantly higher. That's, again, we'll come back out to you with those specifics for the 8 miles in Clinton, as well as every other town along the route, to let you know what each specific structure will be along the way. And it is literally that, each specific structure, there will be some variation, but most of the structures are 10 feet taller. The vast majority of them are 10 feet taller than what's out there today.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
yes, come on up, Greg.
Greg Quinn again, just a comment and a question. When you say average of 10 feet, average by definition means the middle or thereabouts. So it could be 20 to 100 to 0 to 20 or, so.
So there could be some that are 0, that's correct. Most of them are 10 feet taller.
Okay, but some could be 20. If 10 is the average.
I don't want to say that because I want to come back out with real specifics rather than making assumptions about one's 20 feet taller.
I'm just talking about the word average. So that means that something is taller.
Something, and I've said that, some things will be taller. I don't know specifically
No,
what
I'm not
that
saying
height.
specific. I'm saying that there absolutely will be taller than 10 feet or longer than 10 feet.
There will be
If
some,
10.
there will be some.
Then there'll be some that are less.
Correct.
I'm not worried about the ones that are less. I like the 5-foot
But
ones.
understand that because of the SAG and all of the height requirements.
I understand
let me-
that. I understand that, yeah.
Because of the height requirements, because of the SAG, we can't go that far down. So by just the law of averages, again,
Sure.
it can't go up that high, and it can't go that low.
Got it. With regards to transporting these poles to the site, you said that they come in sections. What's the minimum size section?
Ooh.
Guess, just is it 30
We're not going to guess. I'm sorry.
can't.
I would have to say we can't do
My question
that.
is then, without that information, it's hard to ask the question, but my question is, if a lot of our roads are really narrow, as Ray said, they're dirt roads, they're
Sure.
narrow, they're windy, if you cannot get a pole down a road to the site, will you have the right to take out trees, take out vegetation, that sort of thing, to be able to facilitate that? Or is the company going to eat the expense of a helicopter to drop it in? I mean, what's the,
We're not that
What's the
far
thinking?
along in our construction plan. We're not there yet to figure out all of those little ins and outs. We will be. And they will come up with solutions if there is some sort of barrier or limitation for access. From what I'm hearing, the existing access that the desktop review that they've done when looking at it, they believe that it's adequate enough for the equipment. Again, if we bring our construction guy in here, he could talk maybe a little bit more detail, but we're still so early on.
Sure, no, I understand.
We can't give you all of the
my
details.
concern is that, and it speaks to the eminent domain, we always think of eminent domain as taking property to put in a pole, but eminent domain also covers issues like taking or restructuring a particular dirt road by removing trees to be able to get access to your site. Your site, you have the easement, I get that, but to the site, what rights is Transco going to have?
I can't answer that for you
Only
right
those-
now.
Only those which the property owner
Yeah.
gives us. We
Well,
can't, we're
these
not
are
going
town-
to take.
These are town roads.
We're not going to take.
Now, I'm not taking, I'm talking about taking that huge white oak that's 300 years old
And we're not going to take that.
in order to get that, if you can't get that pole in,
Unless the property owner says it's okay, we can't do it.
these are towns, again, these are roads, town roads.
Well, unless it's been deeded to the town, it's a user road.
That's right.
And a user road means that the property owner owns underneath it. And so even
Okay.
right up to the right-of-way, which is only 3 rods, 49.5 feet.
Well, they don't use 3 rods anymore.
49.5 feet, that's why it gets, actually, they do use 3 rods in the highway law. And so, if it's within the right-of-way, then it's up to the town. If it's outside of the right-of-way, it's still the property owner.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, that's time.
I have one other
Okay.
clarification. Maybe it's technicality. On the sheet here, the picture is different than up there. This shows the monopole being in the center of the two.
It's just exemplary. So there will be different placements of the pole. Like I said, we don't have the exact for each parcel. Yeah, and each section of the right-of-way may be a little slightly different. So it's something we're going to come back to you and say, this is where we're planning to put this monopole. And we would say, you live at whatever street, come talk to you about it. And you could say, oh, well, I have this going on. And we may be able to shift it a little bit based on whatever your use of that existing area is.
Thank you. I know we're all anxious because our property is so valuable that we want to know exactly where it's
And
going.
this is a process. I can totally appreciate that. It would be the same exact way. It is a process, and we will come back to you with more information as we get further along in our engineering and design. I know it's frustrating not to have the answers right now, but
Thank
we'll
you
come
very
back. Yep.
Going once, going twice.
And if folks who didn't get any notifications, meet me at the back table after, I'll get your contact info.
Okay, I'd like to thank Shannon and her team.
Thank
for
you.
coming down and providing this information. Probably late summer, early fall, we'll have another seance here with the workshop information. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And this will be on the town webpage, the presentation and the video. Thank you.